everybody. This is the Maintenance Sucks podcast. As we all know, property maintenance sucks, but that is not a Toppy story. And boy, do we have a story for you today. My name is Taylor Coleman, co-founder of Toppy, and we have a very exciting guest today on the pod. Just to give her a bit of an intro, even though we don't really need to. This person has worked every job imaginable in a property management department and has been setting the prop tech world on fire as a key sales leader for Inspect Real Estate, that if anybody doesn't know, was recently acquired by Reapit. And now she is the general manager for all of Australia and New Zealand for sales. She loves the Tommy's Margarita. She might be the biggest Swiftie in property management. Welcome, Courtney Hill.
Thank you. I would definitely say I would be the biggest Swiftie.
It is, and you might have been at a concert past weekend, were you?
I have definitely worked out that you know how there's moments in your life where it's life before and life after? Uh-huh. Yeah, that was the Taylor Swift concert.
So what's better, your kid's birth or Taylor Swift?
No. Well, I think I politically have to say my kid's birth.
Wink, wink.
But a couple of years ago, Melbourne won the premiership, yeah? Mm-hmm. So anyone who listens to anything that I talk about knows that I love football. And I did say that Melbourne winning the premiership was better than the birth of my children. Okay, yes, I know that doesn't make me a very good person, but that's okay.
How many platforms was that on? Like, when would your kids hear about this?
Well, my oldest is 8, so hopefully never. But the Taylor Swift concert was better than Melbourne winning the premiership.
Really?
Like, I'll cry.
Like, you're downright psychotic about your football. So that's interesting to hear.
Quite literally, yeah. So it was like a out-of-body experience. It was unbelievable, yeah. If anybody gets the chance to go anywhere in the world, you will, even if you're not a Swiftie, you will not regret it.
So we're going to talk about a lot of things on the podcast. We're going to talk about maintenance. We're going to talk about your story. But we're going to talk about Taylor Swift for a second because, why not, right?
Why not?
What's going on in the world?
Yeah.
How many property managers, if you had to put a number on it, would you say is a Swiftie?
Oh, Jesus. I'd have to say more than half would be, surely, because, a lot of property managers are women. Taylor Swift definitely appeals to the womankind. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there'd be a lot.
So you're saying men don't like Taylor Swift?
Well, no, they do. They do very much. Because especially men with daughters, I think there's a real connection point there. But yeah, I think there'd be a few that would like Taylor Swift, definitely. So if anyone ever wants to talk about Taylor Swift, just give me a call. I'm there. I am so there.
I think it's really funny, and this is the last thing we're talking about Taylor Swift before we move on. It's actually talking about maintenance on the podcast.
That's a great segue.
It's a great segue, right? I was laughing because I was actually in an office with the property manager who I was telling them, I played football in America. And they go, oh my God, Travis Kelce, I love him. He's so hot. He's with Taylor Swift. And I go, did you know who he was before Taylor Swift? And she went, well, absolutely not. Why would I? And then on the flip side, I have one of my friends who just for whatever reason refused to listen to Taylor Swift. Wasn't about it, and then she got with Travis Kelce, and now he's like, she's the best thing ever.
Yeah.
So we are in a kind of phenomenon in our world right now.
Definitely in a phenomenon in the world right now. And I think, either they're very, very, very good at PR or, has the serendipity of the world brought them together? I don't know. But even if it's a business stunt, fucking good on them. Because it's so good.
I'm a cynic. I'm going to put it on record. It is fake. It's all for business. Just want to put that on record. But hey, what are you going to do?
We're business people. That's how we look at things.
Segueing into business.
Yeah.
So, what does that say?
Well, it's upside down, so please hold. Property maintenance sucks.
So I think we're going to bring a lot of people on this podcast, right? Mm-hmm. I think there's not a better person in the industry to actually talk about this because you have been a property manager.
Yeah.
You have worked the reception desk. You've done it all. And I was looking at your LinkedIn. You have never talked about this. You were the product manager at IRE for the maintenance product. Wow.
Yeah. I know. I've done a bit in the old career. Yeah, no, I sort of stepped into that role alongside when I was a distributor at IRE, or an account manager, just to help out someone who'd gone on maternity leave. And I said, well, I've had a lot of issues with maintenance over the years. Let me help you help our industry. So, did that for a couple of years.
So from your perspective, why does maintenance suck?
I think the challenging thing about maintenance, it's the communication. It's the knowledge. This is a really big part of it. It's the knowledge that you need to have to know how to diagnose it. Small things like knowing the questions to ask, like, oh, my hot water service is broken. Oh, okay, well, is that gas or electric? You know, it's those little questions that if you miss one little thing, that can go. I always say property management is death by 1,000 paper cuts. Now, you do one little cut and it hurts, but it's like, what you don't want is for that one little cut to happen 5 or 6 times and all of a sudden your arm falls off because you've missed 5 or 6 cues, and maintenance is the biggest place this happens, yeah? So where you've missed a question here or you've missed a cue here or you haven't got back to a plumber within an hour, so therefore the entire apartment's flooded because you weren't quickly working on that. So what was a small problem is now a gigantic problem. And there's so much unknown in the process. And it's the communication and it's storytelling, it's selling to your owner why they need to do X, Y, Z to achieve this outcome. And a lot of us that have been in property management have never learnt those skills. We've just been sat at a desk with a bunch of files and gone, here you go, good luck. And when you consider the volume of what a property manager manages, which is typically, if you look at it from an asset point of view, they could be managing tens of millions of dollars worth. Not only that, but also the asset value to the business could be $1 million, $2 million, $3 million, and yet we don't give them the tools to be able to do it effectively. So it becomes a very big problem very quickly.
Yeah, and I think it's a really good point that you make. And you and I go in and out of offices every single day, right? And I think maintenance is about how can you empower your people? Like, we're not talking about software here. We're not selling different software tools. But I think from your perspective, you've ran departments in PM businesses. And obviously you do see it now from a software perspective. Where do you see kind of best practice when it comes to actually dealing with the maintenance?
Best practice. I think that we need to have really clear guardrails for the actual issue isn't the issue. The issue, I think, is that the clear guardrails or process that we teach our teams to follow to get from the moment with maintenance is reported to the moment that it's completed. And completed isn't job completed. Completed is invoice paid, landlord happy, tenant happy, agent happy. So it's identifying where the process starts and where the process ends and making sure there's a very clear and repeatable process where we're taking what I call the sentiment away or the colour away, and we're making it very black and white. This is the process you follow. If you get stuck at this particular blockage, this is without any software in place. If you get stuck at this particular blockage, we stop and then we consider who do we now involve in that process to remove the blockage and keep going. I think it's a really important part of managing properties is that we give the people in our businesses those very clear guardrails that they know what it looks like.
And taking it a step further, because like from your perspective, and we're going to get in, for everybody who's listening, we're going to get into Courtney's story, which is fascinating. But I do want to kind of zero in because, I mean, you are one of the most renowned BDM coaches and trainers, and you were obviously very successful in that role, and you've been a really great PM as well, and you've sold the software, all of that. And I think a big part of maintenance is it's so negative, right? Like, that's the whole point of this. Like, it sucks. Like, it's hard for everybody to deal with it. How would you approach a BDM coming into the industry or a PM on just having to leverage that conversation as a value add from an owner?
Yeah, for maintenance.
Yeah, for maintenance specifically.
Yeah, so maintenance it's interesting because when I was listing properties, this was a really funny story actually. I remember going into this apartment on St Kilda Road, and I sat down with, it's probably back in my day, it would have been a $600 a week apartment, which, 15...
like 4 years ago,
4 years ago,
when you were 25, right?
Yeah, exactly. But I was sitting in this apartment and, back then a $600 apartment on St. was quite expensive. Like, that's a really nice apartment. And I was sitting with him, and I remember I always used to say to my landlords, to set yourself up for success as a property investor, you need to really consider having a buffer, as an example. So it's very common that unknown things will happen.
Yep.
Hot water service will burst. So how much is that going to cost? Perhaps you're in an apartment building and the bath upstairs overflows and the membrane hasn't been put on correctly, or the waterproofing hasn't been done correctly, so the bath falls into the apartment below. Well, your renters can't live in that apartment anymore, so what are you going to do? Yes, you might have insurance, but there's a period of time we're going to have to cover the mortgage. So when I was listing properties, I wouldn't doomsday, but I'd certainly say, hey, this isn't the golden ticket to wealth. Like, you've got to consider this is a 5, 10-year, 15-year experience.
And you might have a $20,000 bill that comes out of nowhere.
And you've got no buffer. And so it's very stressful for a property manager to have to deal with that. So the thing that I would do for any new BDM coming into the industry or property manager coming into the industry is knowing how to have the very honest, difficult conversations in a listing presentation. Don't shy away from it. So this particular guy, I said to him, you really need to have $3,000 to $5,000 buffer, like a month's rent buffer, because unknown things can happen. And I remember at the time, my boss turned around to me at the time, because he was with me, and he said, don't ever say that in a listing presentation.
But I feel like that's really common, though. Like, you hear that when we talk to BDMs, and BDMs go, I don't go anywhere near that. It's an easy way to lose a sale.
It's actually, so I think the market's changed. So he signed with me, no problems, and then I got 3 more referrals from that. Because honesty around what they actually need to do, is so important, because it's not just about, we've all heard the terminology, sales is like dating, property management is like marriage, right? Which is really true. You have to start that relationship off in the right way, because if you're in a business where the BDM lists the property, but then that gets handballed, well, not handballed's not the right word, but that your process is that then goes to a property manager or a leasing consultant or a property manager. When you're listing a property, you shouldn't be thinking about this is just for today. You have to think about setting up that relationship for success for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years down the track, when I can guarantee you something will go wrong, because the nature of property management is we deal with problems. And so we should never shy away from those problems. In fact, I often used to coach with my BDMs that they should have a list of 10, that they should email the customer or the prospect prior to the listing presentation, a list of 5 to 10 questions. I was a bit cheeky with it. A list of 5 to 10 questions.
Was that before or after you would put your face on Jim's all over Victoria, which we will get into as well?
Yeah, awesome. So I would email a list of 5 to 10 questions where I had strategically listed those questions based on what I knew my competitors weren't doing. So I used to do opposition research, which is where I'd contact every agency in sort of a 10-kilometre area. So at that time, I had a different surname because I wasn't married. So my alter ego was Harriet Hill, because I wasn't Hill at the time. So Harriet Hill had an email address and a phone number, and she would contact other agents for opposition research to find out what their fees were, what they offered, et cetera, et cetera. Then what I would do is I would build out my questions based on that. And one of those was, I knew that most of my competitors were not delving into the problems that they just wanted to do sunshine and roses.
Yep.
And so anyway, so the maintenance part of that was a really important part. And I knew that in many instances that if a hot water service broke down, there's every chance that if they didn't have that buffer, they weren't going to be able to feed their family that week. Yep. And I never wanted my customers in that position. So we would teach and train at the start in the listing presentation, bring them on the journey, help them get to that point, and they're just bought in. And I think it's all in the way that you frame it. But you have to talk about what can happen in 1, 2 years, 3 years' time, and help set up your landlords for success. Otherwise, they're just going to go to another agency when shit hits the fan.
Yeah. And it really differentiates you from a fee piece, right? Everybody's going about fees, they're lower. But if you're challenging your landlord up front, this is what you need to do.
Yeah.
It's going to make that much stronger, right?
Yeah. When you're the trusted advisor, not only do they trust you when you call them and say you need to do this because of this, they just trust that you're telling them the right advice. They then go and tell all their friends, and then they tell all of their friends. And with any of my teams that I work with, I talk about the river.
Yep.
Selling shouldn't be difficult. New business shouldn't be difficult. It should just flow like a river. There might be a couple of little pebbles and little rocks along the way, but really you should just have natural osmosis in natural succession where you give someone a good experience, they then give 3 people that good experience, they give 10 people that good experience, and it's just a natural flow.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We're going to have to go on to the next segment, which for any BDMs listening right now, you got some gems from Courtney, but I do want to ask you one question because we're about funny, we're about stories here. What is the worst maintenance story that you've ever dealt with? As an operator, you've heard.
I've got 2 actually. One of them, I'll tell the story because hopefully you might learn something from this, and then the other one's a funny one. I had an apartment up for that was leased out that had parquetry flooring. Now, there's not that much parquetry flooring in the world anymore, but it's beautiful. Like any apartment or anything that has parquetry flooring, it's just beautiful. But it is a nightmare to manage, right? Because you get one tiny little bit of water on it, the whole thing has to be replaced. Anyway, so we had an apartment where the tap wouldn't turn off. And of course, it happened at 4:45 on a Friday afternoon.
Of course, it always does.
Because that's just...
When you're 5 lines deep and you're trying to have a good time, Maybe 6, depending on you.
Well, I did work in St Kilda, so if anyone listening knows where St Kilda is, there was a lot of bars and a lot of pubs and nothing like a sticky vineyard floor on a Friday afternoon. But anyway, so I got this call, and so we said to the renter, turn the mains off and we'll get the plumber out. Of course, they didn't know how to turn the mains off. They didn't turn the mains off. They decided to go away for the weekend with the tap going. They didn't have a plug-in, but for whatever happened, because the tap was going and going and going, it flooded and ruined the parquetry flooring. So that's really coming back to that comment I said earlier. It's just a series of little paper cuts. The plumber didn't get that. So we didn't call the plumber quickly enough. The plumber didn't get out there quickly enough. The tenant didn't do what we asked. So it's just a series of what in isolation would have been a really small problem. But when you go one thing, all of a sudden we've got an $80,000 bill.
Was that how big the bill was?
That's how big the bill was.
Holy shit.
$80,000.
I'm not supposed to swear, but Jesus.
Oh, we're not allowed to swear.
No, you can swear. I'm not
I can swear. Okay, good.
I'm supposed to be the respectable one. But
really?
I know.
Out of you and me?
It's going to be impossible.
Oh, I'd love to know who's more respectful. Come and see us at Arrow at 3 a.m. So $80,000 bill. Now, we had insurance, which was great. Well, the landlord had insurance. We had somebody come out and do the job, but they stuffed it up. So we had to do another $80,000 insurance claim. Like it went on for about 8 months. So I wanted to use that example because it just shows a series of 3 or 4 little things that if you miss something in the process can cause a really, really, really big problem. The other story I wanted to share, which is not really a maintenance story, but God, it's funny. We went in to do a final inspection on a property, which, look, I'll be honest, the whole reason I'm no longer on the tools in property management is because of final inspections. I actually really... It's the nature of not... Like, you think one thing and the legislation's really wishy-washy. It's like, what's fair wear and tear? What's not fair wear and tear? Is this a maintenance issue? Is it they've trashed the wall issue? It was too subjective, and I was like, this is killing me. But there's good things that you can do around that now. But anyway, we went and did this final inspection, and one of the renters had installed a pole dancing pole in the entrance and installed a red light at the front of the property. And, of course, that becomes a maintenance issue, right? Because now we have to go, and there was high heel marks all through the floor.
Our producer's laughing in the corner right now. This is exactly the story that he wanted.
Yeah. So we, of course, then had to go to what in Victoria is VCAT and explain to the tribunal the maintenance challenge we had of removing the steel-enforced pole dancing pole. And then also the stiletto marks through the very beautiful polished floorboards. So that was a big challenge, because once trying to then, and any property managers listening will know, the moment they would have walked into that, I have to call this owner and tell him that there is now a pole dancing pole in the middle of his very, very nice lounge room. So when you have maintenance issues like that or challenges like that, it's not just the fact that you have to fix the problem, but it's all of the stakeholders that you have to communicate around that and the different personalities. And in that instance, it was, do I call the husband first? Do I call the wife first? Will the husband want to keep it? Will the wife be like, oh my God, I'm not having a pole dancing pole in my beautiful house?
Hey, the wife might want to keep it too. Don't
well,
be sexist,
that's true, but probably more the wife than the husband, because, you can do. But, how am I going to tell my 10-year-old kids when we're moving back from London into this home that there's a pole? How do I explain that to my children? So often when it comes to managing maintenance, we also have to consider the story we need to tell to the customer to get the outcome that we need as well. So it's a very fun journey. But yeah, they're my two fun stories.
Which all comes back to communication.
Absolutely.
And biggest thing, thanks again, guys, for listening to the first segment. When we come back, we'll be talking about Courtney Hill.
Oh.
The deep dive.